I think exercise is the single most important longevity drug we have, bar none. Like if you said like, I want to go deep down the rabbit hole of living longer, what do I need to do? It's like a super well-crafted exercise program that is geared towards strength, muscle mass, and cardiorespiratory fitness. Everybody knows that if you smoke or have diabetes, your risk of death goes up a lot. But your risk of death from having high cardiorespiratory fitness goes down by much more than your risk of death goes up from smoking or diabetes. So smoking and diabetes will double or triple your risk of death, depending on the time frame you're looking at. Having very high cardiorespiratory fitness, so having a VO2 max that is elite, we would define that as the top 2.5% of the population, compared to below average, is a 5-fold reduction in all-cause mortality. Wow. Death from any kind.
Whoa.
I mean, we don't have drugs that have a 5x reduction in mortality. We actually now have pretty good data as to the fact that strength is more important than muscle mass. We just use muscle mass as a good proxy for strength, but if you just focus on strength, that's the metric that matters. It's about a 3-fold reduction in all-cause mortality when you compare high strength to low strength. And the tests are, we're talking, it's not like how much you can squat and deadlift. It's like grip strength, dead hang, how long can you do like an air squat? Like what's your quad strength? How quickly can you do 5 reps up and down from a chair? I mean, it's relatively simple stuff. But when you stratify people by those metrics and you compare the highest to the lowest performers, there's just no comparison.
Exercise choice needs to be very concerned with eccentric landing. Right? So you don't need to avoid it, but you need to recognize it relative or compared against those other strength and speed ones. The volume is low on those ones, so if you have some eccentric absorption, it's okay. More eccentric means greater chance of muscle damage, soreness. So if you take something and magnify it across 30 minutes or even 5 minutes, but of maximal exertion, you have a recipe for blowing up. You can imagine, I haven't run in forever, and I've listened to this Huberman Lab podcast, and I'm going to get into my zone 2 training, whatever. And I start jogging. I'm going to do, I remember when I used to be able to do 25, and you just do a 25-minute jog. The amount of eccentric landing that just occurred on every single step, because you're never, with running, even slow running, you never have 2 feet on the ground at the same time. So it is a 1 foot land, your entire body mass plus gravity onto one leg at a time, repeated now hundreds of times. That eccentric landing is going to cause tremendous soreness. Your quads are going to go. You're probably going to get shin splints, which is what those are entirely caused by eccentric landing, and when the tissue is not ready to tolerate that. If you're not landing correctly, this is when knee pain happens, back pain, shoulder, neck pain, because of movement compensation. So anytime we start pressing to fatigue, let's be very concerned with there. So my initial recommendation is start with activities, exercise choice-wise, that are mostly concentric based. So think about a cycle. So when you're riding on a bike, you're pushing the pedal, but you're never landing and absorbing it. So you could go out and do a 45-minute bike ride, and you're not going to get that sore because there's not a lot of eccentric load. Swimming, similar thing here, right? There's some eccentrics when your hand hits the water, but fairly minimal. It's mostly a push, no load. Rowing, similar thing, mostly concentric. Pushing a sled is fantastic. Going uphill, running or even walking hard uphill, all good because they're very minimal landing relative to like running downhill, which would be a very, very bad idea to start. So if you're first jumping into these things, progress your volume for endurance very slowly if it involves eccentric landing. A really bad strategy would be to jump in and do, say, a circuit training class that involves a bunch of box jumps, right? This is not a good way to do your first foray into conditioning. You're going to get incredibly sore because you're jumping and landing. You're now looking at 3 to 10x body weight in terms of absorption with a single land, even if you're just jumping. So be careful of that in any of those endurance areas of exercise choice.
If you were going to try to take a view that on average, where are most people failing to capture benefit, I would say first and foremost, it's around exercise. I think everybody knows exercise is good for them. The question is how much? And it turns out that there's really no upper limit to the benefits you accrue from exercise. So I would say the first piece of advice I would give is, however much you're exercising, you can probably do more and you will extract more value. And yes, there are going to be people who I'm speaking to that are already probably exercising at the point where there's diminishing returns.
Too much.
Yeah.
And they're hurting themselves.
Yeah. But acknowledging that we're talking to kind of 90% of people watching this, you can be exercising more. To which the next question is, great, cardio or weights? The answer is yes. You got to do both.
Right.
And the benefit of having incredibly high cardiorespiratory fitness and being incredibly strong is so significant that it dwarfs even the harm of type 2 diabetes, smoking, and kidney failure. In other words, the magnitude of benefit that being strong and having high cardiorespiratory fitness brings is greater than the harm in magnitude of those other things.
Wow.
To be honest with you, if we're going to be really technical, even bodyweight training is probably not enough. If you think about kind of the aging muscle, it has a few characteristics that define it. And the most important characteristic of the aging muscle that we can see is the loss of what are called type 2 fibers. So if you think back to your life growing up playing sports, what was the thing that most defined your athletic ability? Was probably your explosiveness.
Yes.
And explosiveness is
Fast
really
twitch,
exactly
explosiveness,
those are what type 2 fibers are. Those are fast twitch muscle fibers that give you explosiveness and power, even more than strength. Those muscle fibers shrink as you age.
Really?
And it's the shrinking of those muscle fibers that is what defines the aging muscle. So we have to be able to resist against that as much as possible. Our goal should be to slow and delay that as much as possible, because as we lose those type 2 or fast twitch muscle fibers, that's when we start to get into trouble as we age. And unfortunately, you can't exercise those muscles without heavy weight.
There's a lot of stupid people out there when it comes to like not understanding the right way to work out.
Right.
And I want to tell these guys, hey man, two things. One is if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. Number two, I didn't go home last night and smoke a bunch of crack and dream this shit up. I mean, I've done a lot of freaking research, there's a lot of time and effort that's gone into this. And they'll say, hey man, you're going to throw your back out doing that stuff. No, motherfucker, that's building your back.
Yeah.
Working that transverse plane is what guys neglect a lot. See, here we go. I'm going to get on this freaking soapbox. I swear to God.
Go ahead. Go. Get on the box. Do a box jump
when most
first.
When most guys work out, they live in what I call a sagittalistic environment. 3 planes of motion, frontal, sagittal, transverse. So they're in the sagittal world doing bench press and concentration curls. Out of the 3 planes of motion, I would say that transverse is most important. Additionally, when we work out, I would also argue with confidence that it's the plane of motion that is most neglected, that transverse plane. I like to tell guys that in the transverse plane lives life-saving and ass-kicking. There are 4 reasons why we should exercise. This is Mac's opinion.
Okay.
1, self-preservation, longevity. Good for your health. Stronger longer. Motion is lotion. Number 2, the ability to save your own life. Having that confidence knowing, yep, I could pull myself out of that burning car or over that wall or whatever. Number 3, more importantly to me, is being Batman, the ability to save somebody else's life. So that's 3 reasons. The last one, kicking somebody's fucking ass. So when I look at workout, I look at those 4 things right there. Not like cosmetics or anything. Cosmetics is a cool byproduct. If you work out right, you're going to look better. You look better, you feel better, you're more confident, you perform better, because confidence and performance work hand in hand.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's no freaking magic elixir to it, and it's hard.